That's good.
So when we wrap up, I will be asking each of you as community leaders to talk about how this rise in anti-Semitism should be addressed and hopefully reversed, including the influence of social media. But you mentioned New York. So the New York mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani, who came from Uganda, like I did, and who's a Muslim, a Democrat, has been forced to reassure Jewish residents that he is not anti-Semitic. His past comments about the Israel government's war in Gaza has led many to believe that he is anti-Jewish. He contends that criticizing the Netanyahu government and the way it has conducted the war in Gaza is not a criticism of Jews or Judaism, but is a political criticism. But yet there are Jews in New York who are worried about him, who are concerned of what a Mamdani administration is going to bring forth. Talk to me about that.
Okay, so first of all, he is correct in that criticism of the Netanyahu government and policies of the Israeli government in and of itself is not anti-Semitic. You can talk to half the Jews in Israel who are out there protesting, yes, have been protesting the Netanyahu government, who would like to see a change in the Netanyahu government, who have watched that government shift further to the right and have gotten more appalled at what they've seen coming out of the government. And when tens of thousands of Jews are out there protesting, when we get into, the Israel question, I always ask people, what happens to those people when they're done protesting? Well, they go home and have dinner with their families because Israel is a democracy and they get to do that. If the only thing that the mayor-elect has been guilty of is criticizing the government of Israel, I would be the first one to stand up and say that man is not anti-Semitic and we don't have to worry about him. And maybe we need to lobby him a little bit, and my colleagues in New York would be doing that. It would be a very different conversation than what we're seeing, but that is not what he has only stood for. He has stood for things that have been blatantly anti-Semitic, not just saying that he has a problem with the Netanyahu government. And one of the things he said, if you listen to him in his speech on election day, he talked about the beautiful mosaic of cultures in New York and the city now that he was about to take the reins of. And he talked about cab drivers and bodega owners and all kinds of people who love their culture, love the countries they came from, embrace their additional identities. The only ones he doesn't talk about and the only ones he is condemned for doing the same thing have been Jews when it comes to Israel. And that is a difference. That's when you're singling out Jewish people and accusing them of dual loyalty or blaming a Jewish person for a disagreement with another country. You don't see that in any other group. And so there are legitimate reasons to fear what a Mayor Mamdani is going to do vis-a-vis the Jewish community. I don't agree with your statement that he has been forced to say, that he's going to stand up for Jews. He's being called to account for what he has already said in the past and what he continues to say moving forward.
But he also in that speech talked about immigrants built New York. Mm-hmm. Immigrants helped New York become as successful as it is, and New York is a city of immigrants. Among those immigrants were Jewish people. We were right that he didn't specifically talk about the contributions of Jews, but by the same token, he didn't talk about the contribution of Indian doctors, or he didn't specifically mention ethnicities. He talked about people in general. Or is that a different? Am I listening with a different ear than what you?
I think so. I think you are listening with a different ear, and that's okay because we're all going to.
Sure.
There's not one of us on this planet that does not apply our own personal biases to what we hear, what we see, and what we do. We are all guilty of that in some way, shape, or form. And I would challenge anyone to say otherwise. And we all should be proud of who we are. And I love the notion of New York, and by extension the United States, is not necessarily a melting pot, but more of a beef stew.
Right.
We all come together, and we should be one part of the greater good. But we're not. That stew is separating. It's getting rancid. And when something's rancid, the different parts come to bubble to the surface in ways that are getting pretty ugly. So he might not have said exactly these things in his speech, but by extension of what he has stood up for in the past, what he has said, he has supported Hamas, and he did it immediately after October 7th. Where all of a sudden, an attack on civilians, 1,200 dead people, grandmothers, children murdered, etc., is somehow justified because of policies of a government. It's not about that. It's about vilifying a nation and by extension a people. And I don't have a problem with individuals and organizations who are going to hold the mayor-elect accountable and are going to watch every move that he makes and everything he says in the city where there are more Jews living anywhere else in the world other than the state of Israel. It is just that fact. So there are the people who are concerned about the mayor-elect, and I use that phrase because I oftentimes butcher his name, and I don't want to do that because I want to be respectful, are rightly to be concerned. But as a practical matter, he is going to be the mayor for the next 4 years. And I do know, and I've heard from colleagues already, and I've been on a number of calls with colleagues from New York and around the country about this very issue. They got to work with who they got right now. Mm-hmm. And so holding him accountable is what they're going to be doing. It's the same thing that I do.
Sure.
Another thing I tell my younger mentees, many of whom are a little bit more fractured politically, we've got to, disown this politician because, you know what? I've been in a place where I've had to disown a public official. It's not a good place to be in.
Right.
And I know we all know what we're talking about. But if your candidate of choice doesn't win on election night, shed a few tears, but then on Wednesday morning, get up, get a cell number, make a phone call, congratulate the winner, and do your job.